If you really want to understand a virus, well, the first thing you do is look at it under a microscope.
Right, you zoom way, way in.
Yeah, exactly. You look at the spike proteins, the RNA sequences, the precise mechanism of how it actually binds to a cell.
It's pure cold biology.
It is. But then, when a pathogen jumps from a single cell to spreading across the entire planet, that microscopic view suddenly feels just totally inadequate.
It really does.
It's like trying to understand a hurricane by studying a single drop of rain.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Thanks. To grasp the actual impact of a global trauma, you almost have to do the exact opposite. You have to zoom way out, put away the microscope, and look at the event through a telescope.
Which completely shifts the narrative, right? Because when you look at a pandemic from orbit, so to speak, you aren't just seeing a health crisis anymore.
No, not at all.
You start seeing shifts in the global economy, changes in the environment, deep fractures in how different societies operate. The biology becomes secondary to the philosophy of what is actually happening to humanity.
And that macroscopic view is exactly what we're exploring today in this deep dive. We are looking at a highly unconventional and, frankly, deeply provocative essay published back on February 16th, 2022.
Yeah, it's a fascinating piece.
It really is. It was written by an author named Sue Effing. And the essay asks a remarkably blunt question right in its title. The title is COVID-19 a devil or an angel?
It's a framing that forces you to step entirely outside of the medical consensus.
Right.
By using words like devil and angel, the author is assigning a cosmic intent to a biological event. They're proposing that this wasn't just a random mutation of nature, but an entity with a specific mission.
Now, before we get into the meat of this, I need to put a quick caveat out there for you listeners.
Yeah, definitely an important disclaimer here.
Right, because this essay ventures into some incredibly intense demographic theories and geopolitical observations. Our mission today is simply to act as your guides through the author's thought experiment.
Exactly. We're treating this text as a fascinating artifact of human processing. We aren't taking sides.
No, definitely not.
And we certainly aren't endorsing the idea that a devastating virus is a good thing. We are just unpacking the logic the author uses to try and make sense of a chaotic world event.
Because the way we try to make sense of chaos often reveals a lot more about our underlying worldviews than the event itself. And Sheffin kicks off this entire exploration with a quote that sets a very challenging philosophical baseline.
It's a heavy quote.
It is. The essay opens with this line, quote, "A man of superior virtue does not show his virtue. A man of superior mercy demonstrates no mercy."
Wow.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because applying the concept of mercy demonstrating no mercy to a virus that shut down the world is a massive, almost counterintuitive leap.
It is.
When I think of mercy, I think of intervention to stop pain, I think of a reprieve.
Yeah, but you're thinking of mercy on a micro level.
Okay, how so?
Like an individual saving another individual, but the author is dragging you into a utilitarian macro level perspective.
Right, zooming out to the telescope view.
Exactly. Superior mercy demonstrating no mercy implies that true, ultimate compassion for a system as a whole might look incredibly ruthless to the individuals within that system.
Oh, I see.
Like if you have to burn down a sick forest to let a healthy one grow, the fire doesn't feel merciful to the trees that are burning.
No, it just feels like destruction.
Right. But it is necessary for the forest.
That utilitarian lens leads directly into the author's first major hypothesis, the idea that the virus might have acted as an angel of ecology.
Yes.
The essay points out phenomena from the early days of the pandemic that honestly felt completely surreal at the time.
Oh, totally.
The text notes how animal reproduction subtly accelerated. The specific image the author uses is sea turtles.
Right, on the beaches.
Yeah, because human activity just ground to a halt and the beaches emptied out, you suddenly had these massive increases in small turtles hatching on the sand.
It was like nature immediately rushed in to fill the vacuum we left behind. And the essay doesn't just look at the biosphere, it looks at the atmosphere too.
Yeah, the sky clearing up. The author brings up the smog lifting in India.
Oh, that was incredible.
It was, allowing people to see the snowy peaks of the Himalayas for the first time in decades.
Decades of entrenched, heavy industrial pollution were just erased in a matter of weeks.
Just because humanity was forced into a timeout.
Exactly. And the author weaves these ecological phenomena into a narrative of deliberate intervention.
Okay.
From this angel perspective, the Earth is a closed system that was in acute distress, right? Pollution was suffocating the atmosphere. Human expansion was driving countless species to the brink of extinction.
So it's as if the Earth deployed the virus as its own planetary immune system to fight off human pollution.
Yes, that's the exact thought experiment. It acts aggressively to force humanity to stop, explicitly to protect those endangered animals and give the Earth a chance to breathe.
I get the mechanics of that argument, I really do. But here is where I really struggle with the author's logic.
Okay, lay it on me.
Even if you accept this premise of a planetary immune response, how can a rational person call it virtue or an angelic act when it requires such widespread catastrophic human suffering to achieve that environmental reset?
What's fascinating here is that visceral friction you're feeling is exactly the point of the essay.
Really?
Yeah. The author argues that this harsh action is, paradoxically, the ultimate pro-human move.
Wait, how is it pro-human?
Think about it. If the ecosystem collapses and all the animals die out, human extinction is guaranteed. We cannot survive in a dead biosphere.
Okay, that's true.
So by forcefully and, yes, painfully intervening to protect the natural world from our endless consumption, the virus is technically ensuring the long-term survival of the human species.
It's saving us from our own ecological suicide.
Exactly. It is a macro-level mercy that completely bypasses micro-level tragedy.
Wow.
The author concludes this section by stating that, through this specific ecological lens, the virus behaves like an angel. A terrifying, destructive, ruthless angel, sure, but an angel with a mission to preserve life on a planetary scale.
But just as you try to wrap your head around that brutal utilitarian math, the essay pivots.
It really takes a turn here.
It takes that exact same cold logic and applies it directly to human populations, which brings us to what I found to be the most deeply uncomfortable part of the text, the demographic dilemma.
Yeah, this part is tough.
The author points out the stark reality of how the virus disproportionately affected different age groups.
This is where superior mercy, demonstrating no mercy, moves from an abstract environmental concept to a very harsh human reality.
Right. And the author pulls specific data to highlight this age disparity. They mention a state in the U.S. where, at the time, not a single child had died from the infection.
Which is an amazing statistic.
It is, pointing out that the overall death rate for children in the U.S. was drastically lower than for the elderly. And the text also looks at Japan's sixth wave of the epidemic.
Right. The data out of Japan was striking.
Very. They note that roughly 90% of the deaths in that wave were people over the age of 70.
The virus seemed to exhibit a clear biological bias. I mean, it largely spared the very young while aggressively targeting the old.
Here's where it gets really interesting and honestly quite chilling.
Yeah.
The author connects this demographic data back to the idea of limited planetary resources.
Yeah.
The essay notes that many countries are currently buckling under the immense pressure of aging populations.
Right. The economic and social strain.
So the author poses this deeply provocative question. What if the virus is an angel attempting to relieve that societal pressure?
Oh, man.
Yeah. What if its purpose is to, as the text bluntly puts it, take the elderly to heaven earlier in order to free up living space, resources, and ecological bandwidth for children and young people?
This raises an important question about how we view nature, because it is forcing you to look at a devastating loss of human life through the lens of pure Darwinian population control.
Right, it's brutal.
We have spent centuries building modern societies specifically designed to protect our vulnerable populations. Empathy and medical intervention are, the hallmarks of our civilization.
Absolutely.
So the virus, in the author's framework, represents a sudden, violent return to raw biological culling, completely stripping away that human empathy.
And how are you even supposed to reconcile an angel that functions like that? If you're a grandparent, or if you're watching a grandparent suffer, that entity isn't an angel of population rebalancing.
No.
It's a monster. It's an absolute devil.
And the essay doesn't try to sugarcoat that reality at all. The author explicitly acknowledges the horror of this perspective.
Yeah, they do.
The text openly admits that this mechanism is incredibly unfair to older generations. In fact, the author writes, quote, "For the elderly, it is simply the devil."
That line really struck me, because it perfectly captures the duality the author is playing with.
Exactly.
The exact same force can be theorized as an angel of preservation for a species' future, while operating as a literal demon of destruction for the individuals currently living through it.
It demands that the reader sit with cognitive dissonance. You are asked to look at the cold mechanics of how a natural force operates blindly across demographics, recognizing that nature's balance sheet doesn't factor in human grief.
It's a tough pill to swallow. So we've looked at this dual entity, this angel/devil, through the lens of global ecology and human demographics.
Right.
But then the author naturally progresses to ask, well, how did the massive, complex nation-states of the world react when faced with this force?
Which is where it gets highly political.
Exactly. And again, a quick reminder for you listening, we are just outlining the author's theories here. The essay specifically zeroes in on the geopolitical responses of the United States and China as a way to explore this.
This is where the philosophical thought experiment transforms into a mirror for national policy. The author uses a very clever if-then logical structure to analyze how different governments behaved.
I found this section fascinating because it's basically treating national pandemic strategies like a geopolitical Rorschach test.
That's a perfect analogy.
Your country's approach to the virus reveals your underlying philosophy about humanity's relationship with nature.
Let's trace how the author sets that up. First, they look at the United States, which, as we know, experienced a very severe epidemic with widespread infection.
Right.
The author posits if the virus is indeed this harsh angel bringing necessary long-term benefits like demographic rebalancing and ecological pauses, then places with widespread transmission are technically reaping those systemic benefits.
Which prompts the author to ask a wild question. Is it possible the severity of the epidemic in the U.S. was the result of tacitly yielding to it?
Meaning, did the system unconsciously let it spread to undergo that harsh natural medicine?
Yes. It's a complete reframing of public health.
It really is. Instead of viewing a high infection rate solely as a catastrophic failure of policy, the author explores whether it represents a deeper, perhaps unspoken philosophy of passive acceptance.
A worldview that says, we are part of the ecosystem, and we must ultimately yield to its brutal balancing acts.
Exactly. But then the author flips the script to examine the other extreme.
Right, the devil scenario.
If the virus is a devil, if it brings nothing but destructive chaos with zero hidden benefits, then the only logical response is to eradicate it entirely.
And the text points to China's zero COVID or cleared policy as the prime example of this.
Yes. The author asks if China's relatively mild early epidemic was because they clearly recognized the virus as a pure devil.
And therefore knew the only valid response was resolute, uncompromising elimination.
Right, so what does this all mean? If we connect this to the bigger picture, notice how the author uses that if-then framework to brilliantly avoid taking a side.
Yeah, if angel, then the U.S. approach makes sense. If devil, then the Chinese approach makes sense.
The essay doesn't declare which philosophy is right, it just uses the real-world policies to illustrate the two totally polarized ways humans react to nature's disruptions.
Do you passively yield to the storm, trusting in some grander ecological design, or do you build a fortress and actively conquer the threat, trusting entirely in human intervention?
The author is suggesting that every mask mandate, every lockdown, and every vaccine rollout is quietly underpinned by these massive philosophical assumptions about whether we are subjects of nature or masters of it.
It's incredibly heavy stuff.
It really is.
We're talking about planetary survival, the culling of populations, the geopolitical philosophies of superpowers, and then out of nowhere, the author decides to wrap up this dense analysis by doing something that caught me completely off guard.
Oh, the tone shift here is wild.
They give the virus a voice. They personify it.
Yeah, after pages of utilitarian philosophy, we suddenly get an inner monologue from the pathogen itself.
And it borders on dark comedy. I mean, the author imagines what the virus would be thinking depending on whether it's an angel or a devil.
Right, let's start with the angel.
Okay, so first let's look at the angel persona. If the virus is an angel with a divine mission from heaven to purify the earth, the author says it simply cannot stop until the job is done.
Because it has to report back to its boss.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The essay literally jokes that the virus will just keep coming in waves.
Yeah.
If the old coronavirus fails to wake humanity up and the new coronavirus can't finish the task, then the, quote, senior coronavirus is going to have to take the stage.
A senior coronavirus waiting in the wings to teach us a lesson.
It's so absurd. And the virus itself is incredibly frustrated in this scenario. The author writes this inner monologue where the virus is thinking, my goodness, I'm here to help mankind, but stupid and ignorant human beings are beating and kicking me, condemning me both in speech and writing.
The virus is genuinely offended.
Yes, it's mad that humans are taking its good intentions for evil.
From the perspective of this cosmic angel, our desperate, frantic attempts to survive and develop vaccines are just the annoying, ignorant thrashings of a species that doesn't understand what's good for it.
But the devil persona is even funnier.
Oh, absolutely.
If the virus is just a devil out to cause trouble, it looks at our lockdowns, our travel bans, and our scientific mobilization, and it gets intimidated.
It looks at the human siege and gets scared.
Right. It thinks, my goodness, clever and cunning humans are too difficult to deal with. And the text says the microscopic devil decides it had better retreat, quote, otherwise humans will break my legs.
A microscopic pathogen worried about getting its legs broken by human ingenuity.
It's a completely absurd, almost cartoonish image.
It really is.
Which begs the question, why? I mean, why would an author writing about an event that caused so much real-world devastation resort to a comedy sketch about a germ with a bruised ego?
Well, because personification is one of the oldest and most profound coping mechanisms in human history.
Okay, a coping mechanism.
Yeah. When humanity is faced with a massive, faceless, entirely random biological threat, the human mind short-circuits.
Oh.
We don't do well with blind chaos.
No, we definitely don't.
We struggle to process the idea that millions of lives can be altered just because a protein mutated by chance.
That's too nihilistic.
Exactly. But if you take that invisible chaos and you give it a motive, if you give it a voice, a personality, and a boss in heaven that it has to answer to you, instantly make the trauma easier to conceptualize.
You turn a terrifying statistical reality into a narrative.
Yes. We are imposing human motives onto mindless biology so we can psychologically survive the experience.
Because humans are storytelling creatures.
Right. A story, even a dark or slightly absurd one about a frustrated angel or a terrified devil, is digestible. By making the virus speak, the author is giving the reader a tool to momentarily step outside of their own very real fear.
That makes a lot of sense.
It allows you to view the pandemic as a sort of cosmic play, which creates vital psychological distance from the immediate trauma.
Creating psychological distance, that really feels like the ultimate goal of this entire essay, taking us from the microscope to the telescope. And as the text draws to a close, the author makes a final, very telling admission. They explicitly state that they don't actually have the answer to the question they pose in the title.
The essay concludes by acknowledging that in the present moment, surrounded by the noise of the event, we simply cannot see the true face of the novel coronavirus.
The author writes that we must, quote, leave it to history to make a conclusion.
Right.
After building this massive, intricate framework of ecology, aging populations, and geopolitical Rorschach tests, they just step back and say, well, we have to wait and see.
And for you listening, I think that is where the real value of exploring a text like this lies. Some of the author's perspectives are deeply jarring.
Very.
The demographic arguments clash violently with our empathy, and the geopolitical theories are highly controversial. But examining a shared global trauma through these unconventional, highly philosophical lenses serves a critical function.
It pulls you out of the daily exhaustion.
It really does. It forces us to step back from the relentless news cycle, the debates over infection rates, and the political friction. It asks us to consider our place not just as citizens worried about the next few months, but as a biological species interacting with the Earth's broader ecosystem over centuries. It challenges the inherent assumption that the human perspective, our comfort, our timeline, is the only metric that matters to the universe.
It's a reminder that our standard yardsticks for measuring what is good or bad might be entirely too small when applied to planetary shifts.
Exactly.
Which brings us back to that telescope. We don't get a clean, binary answer today, but we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on the author's idea that history is the ultimate judge.
Because when the dust has truly settled, generations from now, that historical judgment will be the only one that remains.
Right. Imagine the historians of the year 2122 looking back at our era, a full century from now.
The immediate visceral grief will have faded into archival data.
Exactly. When those historians look at the environmental metrics, the permanent shifts in demographics, and the total disruption of the early 21st century, how will they write about this virus?
It's a profound question.
Will they view it merely as a tragic stumble in human progress, a devil we eventually outsmarted? Or will they look at the trajectory of our planet and conclude that this chaos was the harsh, necessary catalyst that finally forced humanity to fundamentally change its relationship with the Earth? A superior mercy, demonstrating no mercy, something to think about.